Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the November Council meeting of Corangamite Shire. I'm the Mayor, Ruth Gastrain, and it gives me great pleasure to have you with us this evening. And I'd like to introduce the new Council of Corangamite Shire. To my right is Councillor Nick Cole, Councillor Geraldine Kennedy, Councillor Laurie Hickey, Deputy Mayor Joe Beard, Councillor Kate Macon, and Councillor Jamie Vogels. Our CEO is Andrew Mason, and I'd like to introduce our directors. David Ray is the Director of Corporate and Community Services. Brooke Love is Director of Works and Services, and Justine Linley is the Director of Sustainable Development. I'd now like to ask all council to stand for the prayer and the acknowledgement to country. We ask for guidance and blessing on this council. May the true needs and well-being of our communities be our concern. Help us, who serve as leaders, to remember that all our decisions are made in the best interests of the people, culture and the environment of the Corangamite Shire. Amen. Acknowledgement of Country. We acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land around Corangamite Shire, the Eastern Maar and the Wadawurrung people. We pay our respects to all Aboriginal elders and peoples past and present. Thank you, councillors. Mr Mayor, we have all councillors present, so we have no apologies. Are there any declarations of conflict of interest?
Madam Mayor, there have been no declarations of conflict of interest.
Thank you. Councillors, confirmation of the minutes. There's a recommendation that the minutes of the council meeting held on the 20th of October and the meeting held on the 10th of November be confirmed. Can someone move those, please? Councillor Kennedy, do I have a seconder?
I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Is there any comments on the minutes? If not, all in favour? Carried. Mr CEO, we have no deputations and presentations, so we'll be moving to committee reports. The first committee report is Councillor Appointment to Committees 2021. Can you introduce this item, please, Mr CEO?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Council has a number of committees that provide a range of different functions and cover different areas of Council's operations. Councillors are appointed to committees and this allows councillors to gain experience across a wide range of areas, participate and chair the meetings and provide a conduit between the committee and the council. Committee membership was discussed at our recent workshop and a recommendation before council reflects the indication of interest by councillors at that workshop. It's recommended that council appoint councillors to committees as set out in the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr CEO. Councillors, there's a recommendation around the appointment of councillors to committees. Would anyone like to move that recommendation? Councillor Hickey, do I have a seconder? Councillor Vogels, thank you. Councillor Hickey, do you want to speak to this motion?
Madam Mayor, thanks very much for the opportunity. Yes, the council is very much part of the integral running of the council, and it's a great opportunity to get a real working handle on how the community works. So, very worthwhile committees.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillor Vogels, did you want to add anything further?
I'd just like to say, personally, I'm looking forward to representing the council on the gas clean committees and working together with this important industry within the Corangamite Shire.
Thank you, Councillor Vogels. Councillors, anything further? If not, I'll put that motion to the vote. All in favour? Motion's carried. Item 7.2 is the COBDEN AERODROME Community Asset Committee 2020. Ms Love.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Councillors, this report seeks council endorsement of the Community Asset Committee for the COBDEN AERODROME for 2020. The COBDEN AERODROME Committee of Management manages the COBDEN AERODROME on behalf of council under the Section 47 of the Local Government Act 2020. The committee held its AGM on the 7th of October. The AGM and committee vacancies were advertised and expressions of interest sought from interested community members. At the meeting, the committee accepted nominations from Mr Les Mulholland and Mr Duncan Morris to fill 2 of the 3 vacant committee positions, as well as elected unopposed Mr Duncan Morris as chairperson and Mr Warren Ponting as vice chairperson. The recommended committee membership will enable the continued active management and operation of the COBDEN AERODROME. the recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms Love. It's a recommendation there, councillors. Two parts. It's interesting Mr Mulholland is here this evening. Would someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Beard. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillor Beard.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, and it's my absolute pleasure to obviously move this recommendation for this very important committee of ours. I will note, as our Mayor, just alluded to, we have one of the committee members here with us tonight, Mr Les Mulholland. So Les, along with Mr Duncan Morris, have both been wonderful in putting their hands up to represent on this committee again. Les obviously representing as a community member, and Duncan as a member on behalf of the Cobden Health Organisation. I would like to say a thank you to outgoing member Des Pekin, who was a previous chairperson over many years of this committee and really did have his heart and soul in this committee. So I just want to publicly acknowledge Des for his work. Also thanking both Duncan as chairperson going forward and Warren Ponting as the Deputy Chairperson. I think we've got some really great leaders in this committee, and I'll look forward to working alongside them. They certainly are very dedicated and committed to the cause, these members, and have certainly stood the test of time over many years of having some challenges at the airstrip, but we certainly value their input and also their expertise on the management of that facility of ours. So certainly my honour, as I said, to move this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Macon, did you have something to add?
Madam Mayor, I'd just like to say I'm very excited to be joining this committee, and I'm very excited to be meeting all the members that are on this committee. I am truly grateful for the opportunity to do all this, so thank you, and I look forward to meeting you in person, Mr Mulholland. That's great to see you here and joining us in this council today, so thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Any further comments, councillors? If not, I'll put the motion to the vote. All in favour? Carried. Item 9.1 is the COVID-19 Financial Hardship Policy Review. Mr Ray.
Madam Mayor, thank you, and through you. Councillors, this report recommends the adoption of a revised financial hardship policy, specifically for the purposes of dealing with matters associated with COVID-19. In particular, members of our community that are suffering financial hardship. Council first adopted this policy back in May of this year in response to the pandemic. The policy initially had a sunset date of the 30th of this month unless reviewed by Council prior. And given the fact that the pandemic is ongoing and recovery is early, and also as a consequence of the extension of the federal government's JobKeeper program, it's prudent that Council give consideration to extending the hardship arrangements. So it's recommended that Council do that this evening, extend the provisional or short-term hardship arrangements until 31 May of next year, unless resolved to extend an additional period by Council before that time. Just to be clear, Councillors, the review date proposed is the 31st of May in accordance with the recommendation. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Ray. Councillors, recommendations before you. Can someone move the recommendation? Councillor Canady. And a seconder?
I'm happy to second that one,
Thank
Madam
you,
Mayor.
Councillor Beard. Councillor Canady, would you like to speak to the motion, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. The financial hardship policy was adopted in May this year and recognises and responds to community hardship imposed by the COVID-19 pandemic. The review identifies the ongoing need for support to eligible business, organisations and individuals, and is based on the principles employed by the federal government. It is essential to have firmly established guidelines for the proper function of this community support to allow it to be delivered properly and within the scope of the council budget. The Senior Officer Group have carefully reviewed and revised the policy to respond to evolving circumstances related to this pandemic. The review also extends the timeframe for community support until May 31st, 2021. I'm very happy to support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Beard, do you have something to add?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, and certainly agree with everything that Councillor Kennedy has just spoken to. Looking back at when the previous council and along with the support of the council officers at the time, everything was, it was so early in the first stage of COVID, and we really didn't know what we're in for or what our communities, the impacts were going to be. So this was one of the strategies that we implemented through this policy as being able to support our communities in whatever way that we could as an organisation. And to a degree, I think we still don't truly understand or know yet the full extent of what the impacts are until once, obviously, things like the JobKeeper and JobSeeker support systems are taken away, and we're not going to know that until earlier into the new year. So I'm glad to see that this policy has had its review and that we can continue to be there for our community. I think it's important that people out there, if they think that they're too ashamed or embarrassed or really don't know whether they're entitled to any of the supports, just have a chat to the council, give them a call, have a chat to the staff that are overseeing this policy. There's so many supports out there, and I think if anything that we can do is just, this is one small step that might actually be able to help our communities recover in what we know has been a really tough time on a lot of people, but I do think we're still in for some future tough times. So I think this is one way that we can continue to help our community.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillors, is there any further comments on this item? Not, I'll put it to the vote. All in favour? Motion is carried. Thank you. Item 9.2 is 2021-015, alterations and additions to the Cobden Preschool. Ms Love.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, councillors, this report seeks to award contract 2021-015, alteration and additions to the Cobden Kindergarten. Council has undertaken a competitive tender process to recruit a suitably qualified and experienced commercial and registered commercial builder to complete the alterations, which will enable 3-year-old kinder to be offered from the Cobden facility. One submission was considered eligible for evaluation. A second tender was submitted late and was returned to the tenderer unopened in line with council policy. A review and evaluation has been undertaken in accordance with the evaluation criteria to ensure compliance with the tender process and to seek points of clarity in relation to the submission. The tenderer has demonstrated capacity and capability to deliver on the project and to be able to undertake the project within the specified timeframes. The contractor is based in Warrnambool and has a second office in Colac. Whilst the tenderer is located outside of Corangamite Shire, they have specified nearly 30% of total expenditure to local tradesmen and businesses. Council has secured $689,000 through the state government's Building Blocks Infrastructure Grant funding, and additional contribution will be sought from the Local Roads and Community Infrastructure Program. The lump sum tendered of $810,000 is within the total budget proposed. Councillors, the recommendation is before you.
Thank you, Ms Love. Councillors, there's a recommendation. Would anyone like to move the motion? Councillor Beard, and do I have a seconder? Councillor Kennedy. Councillor Beard.
Through you, Madam Mayor, and I apologise for our listeners that I seem to be taking a lot of the show, but it's pretty exciting when I've got so much happening in my hometown, and none more so than this really exciting project when we get a new building that's so important and critical to our early years, our young ones in our community that really are our future. This project particularly is important. So this building is, I worked out earlier by actually contacting my dad, is 60 years old. So it's well and truly in need of an update, upgrade, refresh, whatever you want to call it. We're finally getting that new building. Now this all came about in light of the state government's rollout of the new introduction of the new educator and child ratios for the early years in the years to come, and obviously Cobden and Skipton were both identified as being part of that rollout next year. So we identified, or our officers identified, that the infrastructure wasn't fit for purpose And there was a commitment then made by the previous council that these facilities needed to have the work done to, I guess, be fit for purpose. It was great, and we thank the state government very much for their contribution already of $689,000, as Ms Love alluded to, and strongly encourage our federal minister, the Honourable Dan Tehan, to support at a federal level when it comes to handing out the money through a particular grant opportunity in the early new year. So we hope that the shortfall of this project will get picked up through that. We are certainly appreciative of the fact that this particular contract we're able to increase the local content, the percentage that was put in the scoring system when it came to the tender process, and the contribution that was going to be made at a local content level. So this particular company, the tender has actually highlighted that they will be spending at least over $200,000 in our local community to the economy. So that's great, supporting and obviously having subcontractors that are locally known and just locally known, and I think can put back into our shops, our businesses and alike, and it just goes to show that having that local content in there really does help everybody, particularly during the tough times we've had. So a local tender through the competitive process has been achieved through BDH. It's great that hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll get this project delivered in the budget that's been allocated, and it's really exciting times. The plans that we've seen are first class. They're visionary, they look exciting for the kids, and yeah, just can't wait to get this project underway. So thank you, and certainly appreciate moving this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Beard. Councillor Kennedy, did you have something further?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you. Councillor Beard's already spoken to a lot of the important points with regard to the funding, the qualifications of the tenderer, and the fact that they will be using local trades and businesses, which is always a really important factor in these tender processes. But apart from that, this project is something that any community would welcome. The projected data for 3-year-old kinder indicates that there will be substantially greater demand for that service in Cobden, in the order of up to 85 to 95% greater than that currently is. And in the context of meeting community need and attracting new families and ensuring that our buildings are compliant and fit for purpose, this is a project that Cobden Preschool really must have. A kindergarten facility that can accommodate anticipated demand and enable delivery of early years education, especially for 3-year-olds, and this service is something that's increasingly in demand. I think it's a very timely opportunity to secure this necessary facility for early years education in Cobden, and it can serve the community for many years to come. I think it's a wonderful project, and I'm thrilled that we can go ahead with this, and we've got a very well credentialed contractor to take on the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Councillors, any further comments? Put it to the vote. All in favour? Votes carried. Item 9.3 are the quick response grants allocation for November 2020. Ms Linley.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The Council's Quick Response Grants program is a program where grants are received from community groups outside of the larger grant programs that Council operates. In this current report, officers are recommending an allocation of $1,968 towards 4 different community groups, again spread throughout the municipality. It is within the annual budget allocation, well within the annual budget allocation. I offer this recommendation to councillors for their consideration.
Thank you, Ms Linley. Councillors, we have a recommendation. Somebody like to move? Councillor Cole, thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hickey, thank you. Councillor Cole, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd like to recommend this. small, quick grants for the local communities to be able to buy those small things that may fail or whatever. I notice Lismore updating their bowling green and grounds, so they may not have an advantage over Darren for much longer. Not like the castle pool table. And those small grants for small community groups are very essential, so they can just keep the show on the road and keep things afloat with maintenance, and something may break down, they can quickly apply and get a grant, keep them up to scratch again without having to keep going to the local members all the time and getting extra funds. So it's a very important way of keeping the communities active and involved. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cole. Councillor Hickey, did you have anything to add? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Quick response grant program councillors are going to provide financial assistance to a couple of very important groups, the Camperdown Quilters, who make some marvellous quilts for people who have suffered some ill-being. The Walken Cricket Club has been able to increase their financial gain through a mobile FPOS machine, and it's wonderful that the Camperdown Theatre Company this year, because of COVID, have been unable to fill this theatre with singers, but we'll be able now to provide that Carols by Candlelight online. So marvellous grant, and I urge you all to support this group.
Thank you, Councillor Hickey. Councillors, anything further? The vote, all in favour? It's carried. Item 9.4 is the determination of council meeting day, time and venues. Mr Mason.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. The Local Government Act allows council to set a schedule of meeting dates for their terms. Corangamite has previously met on the 4th Tuesday of the month in the evening, and normally in Camperdown, and it's recommended that this practice continue. The council has also had a practice of holding 2 or 3 meetings a year in other towns, and these arrangements are also considered to be an important way for us to get out and meet with and meet in other towns, and those arrangements are also recommended. So the recommendation is before council. It's largely a procedural item, but it's important because it does set the council meeting dates and times for the next 4 years.
Terrific. Thank you, Mr Mason. Councillors, someone like to move the recommendation? Councillor Macon, do I have a seconder? Councillor Vogels, thank you. Councillor Macon.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to say that it's great that us as a council can get around to the Shire and see everyone, and the community members can come along and see what actually happens behind the scenes of a Corangamite Shire council meeting. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity of meeting more of the community members, and yeah, can't wait to see you all at the different venues. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Macon. Councillor Vogels, do you have anything further to add?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think it's just a system that's worked historically well over the years, and look out, Tim Moon will be coming your way soon. Thank you.
The first meeting we're off to is Simpson.
Simpson.
So that's also down in your ward, so
I read it wrong.
that'll be great. Thank you. Councillors, if there's nothing further, I'll put that to the vote. All in favour? That's carried. Thank you. We now move to other business. Does any councillor have anything they wish to raise in other business? If not, I would just like to make some comments, if I can, councillors. If you can indulge me, is just to speak about the state government budget, which was handed down today by Treasurer Palace. And we've heard over the last few weeks there's been various announcements of funding, and we were very excited to hear about the $272 million funding which was allocated for the Great Ocean Road, the inland routes and dairy supply chain. And we're certainly hopeful that once we get down to the detail in that funding is that the North-South Loop, as we call it, is fully funded. That'll bring tourists up from the 12 Apostles using the inland route, Timboon, Port Campbell Road, Princetown Road, Timboon Colac Road up to the Blue Churches is part of that. It's certainly been a strong policy advocacy effort on behalf of the council. We're also pleased that the 12 Apostles Trails received $4.5 million. Stage 1 of the trail will be complete, I believe, by the end of this week. It's a 1.5 kilometre stretch, and the trail building will continue through until hopefully completed by June next year. There's also $206 million worth of rail upgrades that were pre-announced. Most excitingly, though, the announcement that came today was the funding of the new Hampden Specialist School in Terang. It was only a matter of a month or so ago that we were fortunate to receive, or the school was fortunate to receive $1.19 million to begin the planning for relocating the Hampden Special School and the Terang P4 College up to the Strong Street Senior College site. So it was just a complete surprise, and a very, very nice surprise that $10.7 million has been allocated to that program. Also, when we're talking about education, Skipton Primary School will also receive a $4.2 million upgrade. I'm sure one that is definitely needed. From my point of view, Living Libraries funding infrastructure funding has received $11 million across the next 2 years. So that's fantastic investment in our libraries, as well as an increase in the recurrent state government funding of 2.5%. So over the years, that's certainly been below that. So it's great to see that there's been additional investment in our libraries. Regionally, very exciting that the Warrnambool Base Hospital, after many years of strong lobbying, has received the $384 million for the Stage 2 works that are much needed down there. There's also a renewable energy, clean energy initiatives, $1.6 billion, with renewable energy zones announced with a $682 million program with the potential for hydrogen. The Regional Infrastructure Fund, $100 million, some of that has already been allocated, but there seems to be some space, so we'll certainly be reviewing our programs. There's another couple of initiatives which are going to need matching funding, whether it's from federal government or from private enterprises, but $300 million for mobile black spots, $250 million for business grade broadband connectivity. And I think this council has certainly highlighted the issues that we do have around connectivity, whether it's mobile or digital, right across perhaps the southern part of our shire and out to the west. So hopefully with some matching funding, and we'll be able to apply for those funds. Disappointingly, and it's hard to be disappointed after what I have read out, but there are a couple of significant projects that haven't been funded. The Port Campbell Streetscape Council are looking for $5 million from the state government for this very important project. We'll be investing $5 million, as well as hopefully the federal government, and also the extension of the Princes Highway West upgrades. Both of these projects are high priority projects for Corangamite Shire and the Great South Coast, and I'm sure along with the Great South Coast Board, Corangamite Shire will certainly continue strong advocacy to try and get these projects funded. But overall, there's always wins and losers, but I think that in this budget we've probably come out a little bit ahead, I think significantly ahead. So that's great news, and just an update for councillors. The councillors, under the COVID conditions, we're not having open forum as a face-to-face. Anybody was asked if they'd like to submit statements or questions, and none have been submitted for tonight's open forum. We have no confidential items, so on that note, councillors, I'll close the meeting, and thank you everybody who has joined us virtually, and we look forward to talking to you again at the next meeting in December, 15th of December, a little bit earlier for Christmas. So thank you and good evening.